La Rochefoucauld's law. It is more shameful to distrust one's friends than to be deceived by them. Labor law. A disagreeable law is its own reward. Leibert's law. Our behavior drives us to do what makes us happy first. Lackland's laws. 1. Never be first. 2. Never be last. 3. Never volunteer for anything. Lacombe's rule of percentages. The incidence of anything worthwhile is either 15, 25%, or 80, 90%. Corollary. Dudenhofer. An answer of 50% will suffice for the 40, 60 range. Langen's law. If things were left to chance, they'd be better. Langsam's laws. 1. Everything depends. 2. Nothing is always. 3. Everything is sometimes. Larimer's constant. What this world needs is a damn good plague. Las Vegas law. Never bet on a loser because you think his luck is bound to change. Last law. If several things that could have gone wrong have not gone wrong, it would have been ultimately beneficial for them to have gone wrong. Last law of product design. If you can't fix it, feature it. Lonegger's observation. Asking dumb questions is easier than correcting dumb mistakes. Laura's law. No child throws up in the bathroom. Lavia's law of tennis. A mediocre player will sink to the level of his or her opposition. Law of algebra. You never catch on until after the test. Law of alienation. Nothing can so alienate a voter from the political system as backing a winning candidate. Law of ambition. At any one time, thousands of borough councilmen, school board members, attorneys, and businessmen, as well as congressmen, senators, and governors, are dreaming of the White House. But few, if any of them, will make it. Law of annoyance. When working on a project, if you put away a tool that you're certain you're finished with, you will need it instantly. Law of applied confusion. The piece that the plant forgot to ship is the one that supports 75% of the balance of the shipment. Corollary. Not only did the plant forget to ship it, 50% of the time they haven't even made it. Law of arbitrary distinction. Anything may be divided into as many parts as you please. Law of assembly. Interchangeable parts won't. Law of attraction. Power attracts people, but it cannot hold them. Law of balance. Bad habits will cancel out good ones. Example. The orange juice and granola you had for breakfast will be canceled out by the cigarette you smoked on the way to work and the candy bar you just bought. Law of character and appearance. People don't change, they only become more so. Law of Christmas decorating. The outdoor lights that tested perfectly indoors develop burnouts as soon as they are strung on the house. Law of class scheduling. When you are occasionally able to schedule 2 classes in a row, they will be held in classrooms at opposite ends of the campus. Law of computability. Any system or program, however complicated, if looked at in exactly the right way, will become even more complicated. Law of computability applied to social science. Brooks' Law. If at first you don't succeed, transform your data set. Law of doctoring. It never heals correctly. Law of driving dynamics. The speed of an oncoming vehicle is directly proportional to the length of the passing zone. Law of editorial correction. Anyone nitpicking enough to write a letter of correction to an editor doubtless deserves the error that provoked it. Law of fashion. Any given dress is indecent 10 years before its time, daring 1 year before its time, chic in its time, dowdy 3 years after its time, hideous 20 years after its time, amusing 30 years after its time, romantic 100 years after its time, and beautiful 150 years after its time. Law of generalizations. All generalizations are false. Law of gifts. You get the most of what you need the least. Law of highway construction. The most heavily traveled streets spend the most time under construction. Law of human quirks. Everyone wants to be noticed, but no one wants to be stared at. Law of institutions. The opulence of the front office decor varies inversely with the fundamental solvency of the firm. Law of kitchen confusion. Once a dish is fouled up, Anything added to save it only makes it worse. Law of late comers. Those who have the shortest distance to travel invariably arrive latest. Law of lawmaking. Those who express random thoughts to legislative committees are often surprised and appalled to find themselves the instigators of law. Law of legislative action. The length of time it takes a bill to pass through the legislature is in inverse proportion to the number of lobbying groups favoring it. Law of life's highway. If everything is coming your way, you're in the wrong lane. Law of local anesthesia. Never say oops in the operating room. Law of nations. In an underdeveloped country, don't drink the water. In a developed country, don't breathe the air. Law of observation. Nothing looks as good close up as it does from far away. Law of permanence. Political power is as permanent as today's newspaper. 10 years from now, few will know or care who the most powerful man in any state was today. Law of political erosion. Once the erosion of power begins, it has a momentum all its own. Law of political machinery. When no viable candidate exists, someone will nominate a Kennedy. Law of predicted results. Market research can be conducted and interpreted to prove any desired conclusion. Law of predictive action. The second most powerful phrase in the world is, watch this. The most powerful phrase is, oh yeah? Watch this. Law of probable dispersal. Whatever hits the fan will not be evenly distributed, also known as the how come it all landed on me law. Law of raspberry jam. The wider any culture is spread, the thinner it gets. Law of regressive achievement. Last year's was always better. Law of reruns. If you have watched a TV series only once and you watch it again, it will be a rerun of the same episode. Law of research. Enough research will tend to support your theory. Law of restaurant acoustics. In a restaurant with seats which are close to each other, one will always find the decibel level of the nearest conversation to be inversely proportional to the quality of the thought going into it. Law of revelation. The hidden flaw never remains hidden. Law of road. Construction. After large expenditures of federal, state, and county funds, after much confusion generated by detours and roadblocks, after greatly annoying the surrounding population with noise, dust, and fumes, the previously existing traffic jam is relocated by 1/2 mile. Law of secrecy. The best way to publicize a governmental or political action is to attempt to hide it. Law of selective gravity. The buttered side-down law. An object will fall so as to do the most damage. Corollary. Klipstein. The most delicate component will be the one to drop. Law of self-sacrifice. When you starve with a tiger, the tiger starves last. Law of slide. Presentation. In any slide presentation, at least one slide will be upside down or backwards, or both. Law of superiority. The first example of superior principle is always inferior to the developed example of inferior principle. Law of superstition. It's bad luck to be superstitious. Law of the great idea. The only time you come up with a great solution is after somebody else has solved the problem. Law of the individual. Nobody really cares or understands what anyone else is doing. Law of the lie. No matter how often the lie is shown to be false, there will still remain a percentage of people who believe it true. Law of the lost inch. In designing any type of construction, no overall dimension can be totaled correctly after 4:40 p.m. Friday. Corollary. The correct total will become self-evident at 9:01 a.m. on Monday. Law of the marketplace. If only one price can be obtained for any quotation, the price will be unreasonable. Law of the perversity of nature. You cannot successfully determine beforehand which side of the bread to butter. Law of the search. The first place to look for anything is the last place you would expect to find it. Law of triviality. The time spent on any item of the agenda will be in inverse proportion to the sum involved. Law of wealth. Victory goes to the candidate with the most accumulated or contributed wealth who has the financial resources to convince the middle class and poor that he will be on their side. Law of wisdom. Wisdom is considered a sign of weakness by the powerful because a wise man can lead without power, but only a powerful man can lead without wisdom. Laws of gardening. 1. Other people's tools work only in other people's gardens. 2. Fancy gizmos don't work. 3. If nobody uses it, there's a reason. Lawyers rule. When the law is against you, argue the facts. When the facts are against you, argue the law. When both are against you, call the other lawyer names. Le Chatelier's law. If some stress is brought to bear on a system in equilibrium, the equilibrium is displaced in the direction which tends to undo the effect of the stress. Lapelli's law. The bigger the man, the less likely he is to object to caricature. Leahy's law. If a thing is done wrong often enough, it becomes right. Corollary. Volume is a defense to error. Leap year corollary. Exceptions always outnumber rules. Lee's law. In any dealings with a collective body of people, the people will always be more tacky than originally expected. Lummer's parking postulate. If you have to park 6 blocks away, you will find 2 new parking spaces right in front of the building entrance. Lem's law. No one reads. If someone does read, he doesn't understand. If he understands, he immediately forgets. Lenin's law. Whenever the cause of the people is entrusted to professors, it is lost. Lerman's corollary. You are never given enough time or money. Lerman's law of technology. Any technical problem can be overcome given enough time and money. Les Miserables meta law. All laws, whether good, bad, or indifferent, must be obeyed to the letter. Levy's 8th law. No amount of genius can overcome a preoccupation with detail. Levy's 9th law. Only God can make a random selection. Lewis's law. No matter how long or how hard you shop for an item, after you've bought it, it will be on sale somewhere cheaper. Lewis's law. People will buy anything that is won to a customer. Lieberman's law. Everybody lies, but it doesn't matter since nobody listens. Liebling's law. If you just try long enough and hard enough, you can always manage to boot yourself in the posterior. Lilly's meta law. All laws are simulations of reality. Littlewood's law. A person can expect to experience events with odds of 1 in a million, referred to as a miracle, at the rate of about 1 per month. Livingston's laws of fat. 1. Fat expands to fill any apparel worn. 2. A fat person walks in the middle of the hall. Lloyd Jones's law of leftovers. The amount of litter on the street is proportional to the local rate of unemployment. Loftus's 5th law of management. Some people manage by the book, even though they don't know who wrote the book or even what book. Loftus's theory on personnel recruitment. Faraway talent always seems better than home-developed talent. Logg's rebuttal to Gray's law of programming. N plus 1 trivial tasks take twice as long as n trivial tasks. Lord Balfour's contention. Nothing matters very much, and very few things matter at all. Los Angeles Dodgers law. Wait till last year. Loveca's law of driving. There is no traffic until you need to make a left turn. Lowry's law. If it jams, force it. If it breaks, it needed replacing anyway. Lowry's law of expertise. Just when you get really good at something, you don't need to do it anymore. Lubarsky's law of cybernetic entomology. There's always one more bug. Lubin's law. If another scientist thought your research was more important than his, he would drop what he is doing and do what you are doing. Luce's law. No good deed goes unpunished. Lucy Van Pelt's observation. There must be one day above all others in each life that is the happiest. Corollary. What if you've already had it? Lucy's law. The alternative to getting old is depressing. Lunsford's rule of scientific endeavor. The simple explanation always follows the complex solution. Lubuschansky's hurry up and wait principle, Dreyer's law of timing. If you're early, it'll be canceled. If you knock yourself out to be on time, you will have to wait. If you're late, you will be too late. Lyell's conjecture. If a computer cable has one end, then it has another. Lyell's fundamental observation. The most important leg of a three-legged stool is the one that's missing. Lynch's law. When the going gets tough, everybody leaves. Lyon's law of hesitation. He who hesitates is last.